Now that we know what the college football playoff rankings look like, we got a Big 12 semifinal basically coming up.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a crossover episode of Locked On Buffs and Locked On Texas Tech. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And who doesn't love free things, Chris? We are talking about one of the biggest games, I think, of the college football landscape this weekend. And I don't know if most people realize this, but from now on, for Colorado and Texas Tech, respectively, every game is an elimination game in terms of their Big 12 championship hopes. And for Colorado, they kind of have an outside shot at the college football playoff. So one more loss and they're done there. The two teams are meeting in Lubbock. Coach Prima is well aware of food items being thrown. I don't think it registered that it was tortillas. I think he said tacos or fajitas were an option as well, but it is in fact tortillas, and hopefully we could get an explanation there. What do you think's at stake for this game for both teams?
Yeah, and Borba, great to be with you. But yeah, he's like, is that legal? Can you throw a taco? I mean, you can't do that. But we can get into all that. But this is what both teams would have hoped for. You get here maybe in a different way than maybe anybody would have thought. But you're playing a meaningful game in early November, and what we're talking about is I think that both teams have good chances if they went out for a spot in Arlington.
Yep.
With the win there, then you punch your ticket. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here. But I think for Texas Tech, you've got to win out. You've got to win the next three, and they're manageable. There's not one that you just look at and go, oh man, we have no shot there. But it's going to take all of them. And because the way tiebreakers work, you're looking up at Colorado in the standings right now. They've just got the one conference loss, and with a win over them, it gives Colorado their second conference loss, and then you have the head-to-head tiebreaker. Because I think we could get into some of these tiebreaker scenarios. That's why the Red Raiders giving themselves a chance by going to Ames, Iowa, and giving Iowa State their first loss. Now there's a tiebreaker there. And I just think for Colorado, being 20th in the CFP rankings and all those things, which theoretically those are meaningless. It's a bunch of TV, eye test, silly talk. Right. But we all talk about it. It doesn't ultimately mean anything, but it gives you a kind of an idea of the way that the committee is thinking. My thing is, you better just keep winning, and you try to do it as impressively as you possibly can. After that, I mean, at some point, there's nothing else you can do. And then you just hope that they like your league as opposed to the other guy's league, or they like your schedule opposed to the other guy's schedule, whatever. But yeah, this is essentially it's a Big 12 title game, elimination game, almost. I mean, there's maybe an outside chance for either team if they lose it, but yeah, that's in summary, that's kind of the gist.
Yeah, I think to touch on the rankings, my biggest takeaway was it felt like they were valuing brands over success, which we knew was going to happen. That's nothing new, right? But it was interesting to sort of see the rankings. Like for Colorado, this is how I viewed it, and you could disagree with me. Obviously, you're, I guess, from a different perspective, have a different perspective on it. I look at the ranking specifically for Colorado's sake, and there's a bunch of teams ahead of them that are going to eliminate themselves, right? Alabama and LSU play. I don't think a 3-loss team is getting into the playoff, and there's a reason that they are ranked 11 and 15, right? They are basically Alabama's on the fringe and LSU's on the outside looking in. LSU has that bad loss to USC. Then there's teams like SMU, Texas A&M. Texas A&M has 2 losses. They lose to Texas, they're done, right? Iowa State, they lose another game. I think they're done. Kansas State is right above Colorado, but obviously they play Iowa State, so they can eliminate themselves as well. And so the first playoff rankings, they matter until the next one comes, right? That's how it goes. Like it matters for Tuesday night. We talk about it. We get excited about it. We get riled up. But at the end of the day, it was basically a copy and paste of the AP poll. They changed one team in the top 12, and it doesn't really matter. So I look at what's at stake for this Colorado team, and it's pretty straightforward, right? To get in, at least the easiest way, the easiest path for Colorado to get in is you win out. Because the standings right now in the Big 12 are a bit dicey. There's obviously BYU currently controls their fate. They win out, they're in. Iowa State has to win out. They have no more room for error. Kansas State and Colorado are right below them. Then it's Texas Tech, Cincinnati, Arizona State, West Virginia. All of those teams have 2 losses or less. And so there's a lot of weird scenarios that can happen. I like to go over the tiebreakers, Chris, just because it does get confusing. So if there were a need for a tiebreaker, the tie teams will be compared based on the head-to-head record, which in the hard part with these bigger conferences, not everyone plays each other. So Iowa State does not see Colorado or BYU, so there's no really way to tiebreak there. The tie teams will be compared based on win percentage against common opponents. The tied teams will be compared based on win percentage against the next highest placed common opponent in the standings. So this is where really strength of schedule comes to either hurt or help you. Obviously, you can't control which conference teams you play. Then they will be compared based on combined win percentage in conference games of conference opponents. Will be compared based on total number of wins in a 12-game season. And then the representative will be chosen on a highest ranked system by Sports Source Analytics. And then my favorite tiebreaker is a coin toss.
Coin flip, yeah.
That would be
I mean, to sum all that up, just win.
Right, win.
Yeah, just win. And like if you're talking at large, you know, Colorado's biggest problem is Nebraska. Colorado's biggest problem is if Kansas State takes another loss, and so their losses now become like, oh man, you got beat, but you know, and so we may be staring at a scenario to where this is a one bid league, and the only scenario I really see at this point, unless just mass chaos happens, which is possible, is if BYU to roll it and get to the title game and then lose. And then BYU still get an at large, and then the winner of the title game make it in. But that's what makes, you know, this Saturday so important. Just to bring it back to what we'll see at 3:00 in Lubbock, Texas on Saturday. You just, you know, Texas Tech can't afford their third conference loss, or you're kind of out. I think Colorado, it would be their second conference loss, but again, some tiebreakers that, you know, with teams that they're right in the mix with, that they would not have. And but I mean, let's be honest though, Borba, you wouldn't have necessarily. I mean, Coach Sanders may have suggested otherwise, but we wouldn't have predicted that this would be a conversation Colorado would be in back when we were talking about it in August, based on what you saw last year.
Yeah,
you know.
I said that this final 4-game stretch for Colorado, I was calling it the stretch of death, because you looked at it on paper from at the beginning of the season with that lens where it was like, okay, Utah is going to run the conference. Kansas with Jalen Daniels is going to be good. Oklahoma State just made it to a title game, the conference title game, that is. And then Texas Tech was kind of viewed as a dark horse last year that didn't really pop. But then it's like, I feel like the year after, those teams are always back where they're supposed to be. And so I was looking at this 4-game stretch going, this is what's going to define Colorado's season. Now, it still does, but I do think that this schedule is a lot more manageable. Granted, Texas Tech, is a team that scares me the most, right? And I think the biggest thing, which we'll get to in a little bit when we talk about our concerns for each team, is I don't think Colorado's has played a team all season long that can really match them in the passing attack. And I'm not going to say that Baron Morton's as prolific as Shedeur Sanders, but Texas Tech's passing attack is known for – they throw that thing around, right, Chris? So this is where it gets a little dicey for Colorado. What's at stake for both teams in conclusion is you lose this game, and I don't want to say your season's over, but you're going to be doing a lot of hoping and praying and rooting for this team to do this and that team to do that. And that's the last position you want to be in.
Yeah, and you know what else has hurt the league? Well, what else has hurt the league is like what you were talking about a second ago, is that the teams that were predicted to do so well and that everybody thought would, you know, they were ranked so high early on, the outside view of it is like, well, that league can't be that good because Utah is terrible, Oklahoma State's terrible, Kansas is terrible, on and on it goes. And, you know, but that's the beauty of sports, right? Yeah. I mean, you'll see this, but like basketball wise, you'll get the benefit of that. Football wise, for whatever reason, it's like, come on, man. I mean, you know, when Vanderbilt sneaks up and beats somebody, it's like, oh, this league is just so brutal. I mean, look at sweet little Vanderbilt, man. They got him a dub. Whereas somebody that wasn't expected to rattle them off in the Big 12, it's like, yeah, the league's not any good. I mean, it drives me crazy, but that's the difference between a 12-team playoff and a 68-team playoff. Is that you get the beauty of the bulk of the league getting, the basketball wide, you may get 8, 9, 10 bids. I don't know, but let me ask you a few things about this Colorado team. Then we can talk about Texas Tech a little bit too.
Yeah,
they seemingly run the ball a bit better than last year, and you tell me true or false. So we can kind of get into that. They seemingly have gotten quite a bit better on defense.
yes.
Offensive line wise seems to be improving, maybe not where they ultimately want it, but is there anything that I'm missing on? I mean, because there were some things they just weren't very good at last year, period. And they tried to fix it and address it, but it seems like check on a lot of these things. Yes.
Yeah, I think they pretty much addressed all their issues, which I don't say skeptical about, but when you replace when you place both coordinators, get a brand new offensive line, new defensive line, it's hard to sort of be like, fixed it, right? I've never seen half of these guys play together. But yeah, realistically, the run game, I'll go point by point for you. The run game isn't going to be, it's not Taj Brooks, right? They're not running for 100 yards. There's yet to be a 100-yard rusher in the Deion Sanders era. They came close a couple weeks ago. Isaiah Gus have got 91. But it's sort of situational, right? It's 3rd and 2. They're going to run the ball. They're in the red zone and they want to pound it in for a touchdown. They're going to run the ball. They're going to break it up a little bit. But Chris, Colorado is undefeated this season when they run the ball 14 or more times with a running back. When they don't, they lost to Kansas State and they lost to Nebraska. In those 2 games, they did not you have to at least try to run the ball is my thing with Colorado. It's not going to be pretty, but you have to try it. Offensive line wise, I don't love the group, but they're better than us. So
okay. Improvement.
Right. Yeah. I said it all off season. If Colorado's offense line was average, then Shedeur Sanders will blow up, and he has, right? And so,
you and I talked about it in the summertime, and I think you put some of this on Shedeur in that there was at times last year he would just hold on to the ball way too long. Has he gotten better there in that aspect? Because they still have given up 26 sacks on the season.
Yeah, he's gotten better, but there's some of those sacks are on him. I think it was, I want to say against Cincinnati where the pocket broke, he runs out, scrambles. He's great at that. I'm not going to take that away from Shedeur Sanders for how, I won't say unwilling he is to run, but he doesn't like to take off and run, but he will evade the pressure and get out of the pocket. There was a defender from 10 feet away from him, just like running straight at him. And he just waited and was hoping for someone to get open. He took the sack and it's like, okay, throw the ball away, run, do something. Don't do that. Right. And so I think he's better at it. I still think part of him is always trying to make a play, which I mean, I'm not going to be mad at my quarterback for trying to make a play. It's just know when the time is up, right? You kind of have that internal clock. But the offense line is good enough. I think they've been a lot better. There's been multiple games this year, Chris, where they've given up 0 sacks, which could not be said last year. And then defensively, defense has been a revelation. I'm going to be honest with you. I think Robert Livingston, their defensive coordinator, I think he's probably in the running for hire of the year across college football because he inherits a unit that ranked pretty much dead last in everything. He replaced Charles Kelly, who was from the Nick Saban tree. We had a lot of buzz around him because it's like, oh, it's a Nick Saban guy, right? And it's like Nick Saban tree. He's going to do great things. And it's like he brought his system and it didn't work, but they still ran that system. My favorite story about Robert Livingston is he came to Boulder without a playbook and said, what are we good at? And so they're good at man coverage. They run a ton of man coverage. They have, I think, one of the best secondaries in college football, probably that most people don't realize. Outside Travis Hunter, both their other corners are really good. And so, and against the run, they've been locked down, right? They went to UCF, and I think at the time UCF was averaging 375 yards rushing, and Colorado held them to well below that. They did the same thing against another really good rushing team later in the season. So it's a very, very different Colorado team, way better. And I'm going to ask you about Texas Tech when we come back, but we're going to take a quick break from our sponsors because we got to get paid, Chris. You know, we got to make the people who are important happy. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Hims. Gentlemen, we all know that those moments in the bedroom matter, and we always want to be up for those moments. Sometimes intimate moments they happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready. So we could perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer. Who doesn't want that? So you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/locked on. That's HIMS.com/locked on for your personalized ED treatment. Hims.com/locked on. This product's mentions are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with the healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan. This episode of Locked On Buffs and Locked On Texas Tech is also brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Chris, the NFL season is here, and these people need to be ready to take on the NFL action with FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's dive right back into it. It's Locked On Buffs. It's Locked On Texas Tech. It's a crossover episode. We're talking about our concerns for this game. But first, Chris, I want you to talk about this Texas Tech team. What have they been doing well, right? I think there was last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, uncertainty around the quarterback. He just wasn't, or that position group just wasn't where I think the program needed it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, injuries were the problem there. Is that you had your starting quarterback go down at West Virginia, and then Baron Morton is the one who, Tyler Shuck, who's now the starting quarterback at Louisville. And then Baron Morton comes in, and I think 2 or 3 series later in the same game, takes a shot, gets an AC sprain on his shoulder, and then played the remainder of the season with a jacked up shoulder on his throwing arm, and wasn't practicing in the middle of the week. But yes, I think you just kind of muddled through, and that's why you kind of started to establish just a run game, and you weren't all world at it, but this was your path to victories, and you scratched and clawed and made it to a bowl game and won it. And I think there was a lot of concern about Baron Morton in the offseason because he got shut down in the spring just to rest his shoulder, and we got to make sure. And so everybody comes into the season, you're like not real sure, but I think Baron has been very good this year. And you had a scare 2 weeks ago in Fort Worth when he gets knocked out of the game, comes out of the locker room with his arm in a sling, and you're thinking, here we go again. But they feared broken collarbone, and turns out just a bone bruise. I think he's fine, and he played great at times in Ames. I think he missed plenty of throws and all that. Now, Iowa State has a lot to do with that too. But yes, he is. He would always tell you he could be better. There's some missed throws, but there were some key throws in that final drive, and he went on a 98-yard drive at the tail end of the third quarter against the top-ranked defense in the Big 12 Conference, and he's managed the situation well, and I think he's good for making some plays, and as long as he avoids the mistakes, he's been pretty solid for Texas Tech this year. Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about Taj Brooks, because I think this is one of my concerns, and we'll kind of start off this segment with this. Colorado's been really good against the run, right? They stopped UCF. I think UCF has a lot of problems. I think Colorado exposed a lot of UCF's problems, and they've since tailed off, but they were a solid team when they played them. The team that had a lot of success against Colorado running the ball was Kansas State. They had DJ Giddens, and I think he was the most dominant sort of running back that they've faced up to this point. But now they play Taj Brooks, and Taj Brooks, for those who don't remember, he's been in college for 10 years, it feels like. He's been toting the rock for Texas Tech forever, and he's elusive, he's strong, he's fast. Talk about what he brings to the table and sort of what's at stake for him as well.
Yeah, Borba, he's just solid. I mean, there's a reason he's still in college. This is obviously his 6th year. He doesn't have as many carries and as much wear and tear as you'd think because he was splitting carries early on in his career. He's really only been the feature back last year and again this year. He's great all around running back, but he lacks elusive elite level speed. I mean, this isn't Bijan Robinson or something like that, or he would have been gone to the draft and been playing in the NFL somewhere. But he's going to get his. He can take no yards, negative yards, and they can bust off 18. And I think they internally realize they've got to be patient with it. It may not look perfect all the time, but they scheme it up a lot too. But Taj just doesn't go down with the first or second tackle a lot of times. He's not necessarily a threat to go 60 or 80 every time he touches it. And that's, again, kind of the one knock, but he's tremendous when it comes to blitz pickups. He's a very well-rounded running back, and he's gotten 100 yards in every game he's played this year. So he's going to get his. I think what makes him so good, though, is that they do have legit wideouts here. They have guys they feel like will play at the next level. And you've got a group of tight ends that put a lot of pressure in the run game and in the pass catch. I mean, all the stuff. And so it kind of, they all play off of each other. This isn't a deal where you can just raise your hand and go, we're giving it to this kid 35 times. We don't care if you know what we're doing. We're gonna run for 225 yards. Good luck. I mean, that's not what you're doing here, but it's mixed in run. It's play action. One sets up the other, and then that's what makes the passing game work. But they've got, Josh Kelly, Caleb Douglas, Coy Aiken, and a guy like Jalen Conyers. I mean, they're legit. I think Tech's offensive line is the main question mark with their team, but that's what allows Taj to do it. But so it all plays off of each other, if I'm making sense, and that's what's been kind of fun, because if you can establish that run, it opens up the play action. Now look out, and Zach Kitley is very creative, and they do a lot of different personnel groups, and it opens things up typically.
Yeah, and you mentioned the offensive line. I feel like we're going to talk about that quite a bit this game. I think this game
for both teams.
This offensive line gate matchup is going to be one that I don't want to say it'll define the game, but it will certainly be a factor, right? And the only reason I don't want to say it'll define the game is from Colorado's perspective, they've won games while giving up 8 sacks. So it's like they have to be timely sacks. But I will say Colorado's defensive line has been finding the quarterback a lot lately. How much of a concern is it of yours that Texas Tech is unable to protect Barron and sort of open up that run game and the play action pass?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a major concern. I think that you'll see a lot of, in terms of, they get rid of the ball quick around here. I think that's where, you can use some of this aggressiveness with the pass rush and mix in that running game with inside zone and some different things to keep everybody off balance. But it's absolutely concerned. Where they're weakest is typically at tackle, and I think specifically left tackle. That's really where they struggle the most, and there's some question about who will even play left tackle for Texas Tech this weekend, because I think the one that Ty Buchanan, who played in Ames last week, he's on the injury report and all that, so he's questionable for this week. So that's kind of the game within the game, honestly, is like which trenches who had, because we'll talk about a lot of skill, and we have, and understandably so, but the game ultimately be won by a bunch of guys that we don't know their names up front on either side of the ball right there, and who can get to the opposing quarterback and who can protect their guy. And that is paramount. And it's all the guys that we haven't really and won't spend much time discussing, but they will ultimately decide this thing.
Yeah. I think for Colorado, they have to get to the quarterback and they have to do it consistently. Same thing for Texas Tech. And the thing with getting to Shedeur, and I'll sort of answer a question for Texas Tech fans here, is you have to get to him, and you have to get to him in a timely manner, right? You can't, there's a difference between getting to Shedeur Sanders in the first quarter on first down, and it's like, okay, we sacked him, great. Well, he'll still bounce back from that. These sacks need to occur on third down. They need to occur on obvious passing situations, and it needs to be like momentum killing, because I think this team, I would say Travis Hunter's probably the best player. I would say He's probably the heart and soul of the team. I would say Shiloh Sanders, the brother that plays safety. He's sort of the leader, or one of the leaders on defense. They have another safety who's a leader on defense. Offensively, Jimmy Horn Jr. and LeJontay Westwood, they're two receivers that are really fast. They're kind of like the energy sparks, but the team runs through Shedeur. And so when Colorado loses, and we saw this against Nebraska, Shedeur had a very bad game. He had a terrible game. And it was like I won't say he was rattled, but I think the team was rattled that he wasn't playing well. And so you have to sort of get Shedeur to not be confident. And Chris, when I tell you that's nearly impossible, it's very difficult to make Shedeur Sanders not confident in himself, but it comes with getting pressure on him consistently, hitting him, taking away those big throws, because he will take what the defense gives him. But I feel like he's always looking for that big throw as well, because, I mean, why wouldn't you want to air one out down the field to Travis Hunter, right? And so that's where I think Texas Tech sort of has to make sure they're getting to the quarterback. It's in these timely manners. It's in these big passing situations, because if you give up big plays to Colorado, even though it's not a Colorado crowd, the Colorado energy, the aura, if you will just overwhelm Texas Tech, and you'll see it if it happens.
Yeah, there's no plan B for Texas Tech if you can't make him uncomfortable. I think what Tim DeRuyter on defense, what he's done at times this year is he confuses quarterbacks. He changes the picture. They mix it up. Okay, what coverage are you in? Okay, you showed me this, but when I snap it, now you're in that. And, they confused Josh Hoover a little bit a couple weeks ago in Fort Worth, and, done some different things. But there's been a couple of games, man, where they haven't even sniffed getting to the quarterback. Haven't even sniffed their opener against Abilene Christian. The game a couple of weeks ago versus Sawyer Robertson and Baylor just never even came close to putting any pressure on him. And it looks like 7-on-7 back there. And you're not going to win that game, especially if you do that here. And they've gotten better with it. They made Noah Fafita run all over the place. I think they made Rocco Becht very uncomfortable in Ames, Iowa. For most of the game, I think they did the same thing with Josh Hoover and Fort Worth. But, yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I think they know that. Like, they can't – there is not a path to victory that includes, yeah, we can give him all day and outscore him or, and all those things. I don't see it. But I think the same thing can be said about Colorado as well. Yeah. They've got to take Barron off of his game as well.
Yeah, they have to get to the quarterback. And I think they found it recently. I don't know what happened, but it was like the first 3 or 4 games, there was no pressure. They weren't getting to the quarterback. And then all of a sudden a switch flipped. I think it was after the UCF game, to be honest. And I could be wrong, but at least as of last week, Colorado had a bye, so it might have changed. But they were leading the Big 12 in sacks. So they flipped it real quick. They flipped a switch. I just want to give everyone a stat or sort of a little analysis. In Colorado's past 4 games, Shedeur Sanders has been sacked one time, 6 times, which was the loss, and then 2 times. In those 3 games where he was sacked 2 or less times, he completed at least 80% of his passes, threw for at least 250 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, and 2 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions across those games. So he is very dangerous if you do not get to him. And defenses will find that out. When we come back, we're going to be talking about our keys to victory, what these teams need to do. Otherwise, they'll find themselves on the outside looking in of the Big 12 playoff picture. We all know there's going to be some partying before the game, some tailgating, some tortilla throwing, maybe some tortillas infused with some fun stuff. But make sure you take your Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink, because it's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle a rough morning after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, it gets converted to a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break down that byproduct. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Here's exactly what you need to do to make sure you're feeling great that Sunday morning. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For the best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself. Hydrate. Have a good night's sleep. Eat something. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. If this interests you, go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege. To learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantees. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund you your money back, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout for 15% off. It's ZBiotics. Go check them out. This episode of Locked On Buffs is also, and Locked On Texas Tech, is brought to you by our sponsors over at Game Time. If you, for some reason, haven't got your tickets to this game, go get them on Game Time because they got the best deals and they have a bunch of great features. They have Game Time picks that makes it easier to save even more on sports, comedy, reviews of all prices that feature the show's total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. And you get a seat view, so you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And the lowest price guarantee, make sure that you get the best price, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. It's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Okay, Chris, that was a mouthful. I was dying right there. I was fizzling out towards the end. I was getting tired. I felt like I was running. Okay, we're talking about what they need to do to win. I think we've kind of teased this a little bit. I'll start with Colorado in the sense of what I feel like is the best way to win this game. You have to take advantage of the Texas Tech secondary, right? They've shown some weaknesses. Get Shedeur Sanders. He needs to get the ball in the hands of the playmakers. Let Jimmy Horn Jr., let Travis Hunter, let LeJounte Westbrook do their thing. And just rely on the defense to make some plays. What is a key to victory for you for Texas Tech?
Well, I think there's some things when you go into this game that there's a given. Like, I mean, Shedeur Sanders is they're gonna complete some passes, and there's gonna be some big plays there. It doesn't matter how good you are on the other side of it. I think that for Texas Tech, Taj Brooks and the running game, there's gonna be some plays that you make just because you are who you are. Mm-hmm. But I look at it and. This could come down to like one of these one-score games. I mean, half of the conference games are basically that. Now, Colorado hadn't played in some of those, but the Baylor game was one, and they were fortunate enough to survive it. But like, who makes the play, or better yet, who makes the mistake on special teams? Does that decide it? Texas Tech's got some great kickers. They use multiple. They've had a fake field goal a couple weeks ago. They've snuck in a few tricky 2-point conversions. Just who kind of wins that aspect of this game, if in fact it is a close game, because that could tilt this thing one way or the other. And then who does a better job of taking care of the ball? I hate to be Captain Cliche there, but. Yeah. Having said that, Texas Tech won the turnover battle 3-1 in Fort Worth and still lost. So but last week it was 2-2, and it was you kind of hung in there and you just outlasted Iowa State. So I think this will be a very close game. I think it should be very fun. And I will say this, Borba, I do love that each coach has been so outspoken positively about the other. There's a lot of mutual respect between Joey McGuire and Deion Sanders. They've known each other for a long, long time, and that's fun because there's it's pure. From the time I host Joey's coaches show in town, and really from the time that Deion's name was mentioned and Colorado was mentioned about the Big 12 and all that stuff, always spoke glowingly. I heard everything that Deion had to say, and that part is fun because I think that's rare. In this, with people like, question each other, tampering, or you recruited my kids, or there's all kinds of chaos sometimes with coaches not liking each other, or you took my coordinator, whatever. I don't know. These two guys seemingly a lot of mutual respect that go way, way back, and that's a lot of fun. And I know that they'll be excited to see each other, but I think we're in store for a big one, man. I think it should be a lot of fun, and we'll see kind of who comes out on top. Texas Tech has been really good at home. The last home game they played was one of the worst they've played in Joey's tenure. So Go figure. I don't know what you get. He's also been really good in one-score games. I think they're 7-2 in their last 9 one-score games in the Big 12. Okay. So, we'll see. I don't know if they'll play poorly in back-to-back home games, but maybe so. I don't know.
Yeah, first of all, I like that you mentioned the positivity. I think, especially since it's genuine, I think that's cool because – last year compared to this year, I've noticed a big difference in coaches I don't know if it's just the Big 12 maybe doing it, and it's just how the Big 12 coaches are, but there was a lot of subtle shots taken last year about Colorado, how they were doing things, and it became Colorado's whole mantra of like, this is personal. They made it personal. And it feels like this year, which I mean, I think it's part of maturing. Like Matt Rule was much more cordial towards Deion Sanders this year, as opposed to taking a shot as a roster last year. I do feel like there's more kindness in the Big 12, which I mean, not a metric, not a stat, not anything important really, but it's just nice to see that you could support other people and not have to be like, Chris is good, but, or like Kevin's good, but like, I feel like there's like a general respect there. And it's cool to see that that's continued on throughout the season because Colorado really hasn't had, outside of Colorado State, which I don't know if you're familiar with Jay Norvell, but
oh yeah, I'm well aware.
He's a talkative fella and he will say things. And I think that's the one team this year that has basically taken shots at Colorado and they lost by 17. So, I mean, do what you will. But back to the football. And this is kind of my final key to this game for Colorado. You have to slow down the playmakers and take away the big plays from Texas Tech, right? I think that was the one thing when I watched the Iowa State game that Iowa State was not able to do when it mattered the most. Baron Morton took multiple shots down the field. One of them, I think, was dropped or broken up at the very end, but they were taking shots and they were pretty much hitting on all of them. Taj Brooks in that final run into the end zone wasn't a 30-yard run, but it was a big play, right? That was a crucial moment that he powered into the end zone. Colorado needs to take away those moments. If they allow Texas Tech to sort of hit on those big plays and they're going big play for big play, I like Colorado's chances just because I feel like they're very much a big play oriented team. But again, like I said earlier, Colorado has not faced a team with a running back this good that's paired with receivers that are this good. Arizona has Tetrell McMillan, but it's him by himself. Josh Kelly is someone who I think every team in the country at least gave a look at last year when he was in the portal because he's really damn good. He was really good at Washington. I know Cam Ward probably wanted him to follow him to Miami, but he's really good. And then Jane Conyers is a tight end who I don't know if the Big 12 has that many elite tight ends this year, Chris. And I feel like he'd probably be one of the best ones if I had to sort of put that out there. So don't let them hit on those big plays. Otherwise, this will get uncomfortable.
Yeah, I just this it'll be a great atmosphere, and I think and this is what you want to be involved with, man, is like playing meaningful football.
Right.
I mean, what were the expectations for Texas Tech this year? Joey said it. I mean, I remember saying this. It's like you just want to play meaningful games in November, so you're in the race, and here it is. You're going to get. A week or two into November with a lot on the line. It's not everything on the line. It doesn't totally eliminate you or it doesn't punch your ticket to anything if you get a win, but it's relevant. It's meaningful. I mean, big noon kickoff will be here and the whole deal. So, there's a lot of distractions, but as Joey McGuire is trying to tell his kids all week, make it about the football. Don't worry about anything else, because you just don't know when you get these opportunities. And he had said it after the Baylor loss or the TCU loss. It's like, I see these young people and they think, we'll be back next year. We'll get another opportunity, whatever. And you just don't know when it ever shows up. And not that you necessarily have a golden ticket here on an opportunity, but you're back in the conversation because of what you did in Ames, Iowa, and you have to try to capitalize on it. Because again, you're just not sure when it comes to injuries and luck and a bad call here and there. You're just not sure. A lot of things have to go right to kind of maneuver your way through a season and give yourself a chance here. So I'm looking forward to it. Borba, you were nice to host. I appreciate it. You're good people. You're good people. I appreciate you. We endure a lot on those roundtable shows that the Big 12 folks put us through. You're a saint, and you're the only one of the sainthood on that particular show. So anyway, with that,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you for joining us, Chris, and I appreciate the powers that be for making this game not at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And it's really hard to do a live show at midnight when I'm running on fumes after riding all day. And I'm like, okay, let's talk some football, as I feel like I need some Z-Biotic because I feel a little drunk. Before we go, Chris, can we get a 20-second explanation on why tortillas are thrown?
So back in the early 90s, I think there was an announcer. I think this was a Texas Tech, Texas A&M game. There was a TV announcer that said something about, there ain't nothing here but a tortilla factory or something along those lines. It was derogatory.
Okay.
And so the Tech fans embraced it the week after, and it's been rolling ever since. So when the kickoff or after a touchdown, there'll be flour tortillas that get thrown in the air. They freeze them, they put holes in them and throw them, and they don't hurt anybody. They just it's just a fun deal, and it's stuck for about 20, 25, 30 years, I guess now, and I don't see it changing anytime. You'll see a variety of people come out on the field and clean them off and all these things, but it's just one of those funny college traditions that kind of was extremely organic, and it's still around. So, yeah, they're not tacos or fajitas, but they're just flour tortillas.
I mean, less messy. I can't imagine getting hit with a carne asada taco or something would be fun.
That's right. And it is legal. It is legal. I know Deion was like, is that even legal? Can you throw a taco? But yeah, it's legal to throw a tortilla, at least in Lubbock at Jones AT&T Stadium.
There's a tortilla clause, Coach Prime. You got to know about the tortilla clause. It's there. This has been a Locked On Buffs, Locked On Texas Tech crossover. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in every single day, making us your first listen of the day. Locked On Buffs fans, you guys know where to find me. Every dayers, we appreciate you guys and hope all of you have a great rest of your day. And we will see you on our respective shows tomorrow.